You're listening to the e-commerce edition of Hello Moxie with Nicole Donnelly. In each episode, we speak with leaders in the e-commerce industry on promoting diversity in the tech sector, the latest e-commerce trends, and how B2B brands can innovate through e-commerce. Hello Moxie is sponsored by DMG Digital, a woman-owned marketing consultancy dedicated to helping B2B companies create exceptional customer experiences.
Hello, we're here live with the amazing Letoya Boyne. And Letoya, thank you so much for joining us today on Hello Moxie. It's so lovely to see you. I have to say, I love your lipstick. That is like the most beautiful color ever.
Thank you.
It's lovely.
This is one of my go-to lipstick lines.
Oh.
Female, minority-owned, the Lip Bar.
The
Little
Lip Bar.
Shout out, really. They have some really great hues, and they last all day for conferences like this. So.
Very cool. That's amazing. I love that already you're shouting out women-owned businesses right on the top of the show. Woo woo. High five for that. That's awesome.
Got it.
So, Letoya, I'd love to know, what is it that's lighting you up right now about e-commerce?
Well, I think that there is a sort of a spirit of inspiration that is happening right now in the tech space in general.
Yeah.
And I'm always inspired when I come out to events like this, which I get to travel to all over the world and see women and minorities thriving in a space where there is traditional underrepresentation.
Yes.
And I get to be a part of that community and help motivate and grow others to join us in the growth of e-commerce and in tech, and really see that flourish. So.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I mean, I've noticed being part of the Lady Magento community and the Women in E-commerce event that we had last night. It's just such a lovely, close-knit, supportive community of women. And it's just wonderful to see women continue to thrive in the space. I mean, we've talked to so many women since we've been at the event who are just doing amazing work, you know, and it's so important for them to speak up and have a voice and share their knowledge and their experience. And that's kind of the purpose of the show, is how can we do more of that? How can we really elevate and amplify these voices?
And I have to say, in terms of the Magento community, this is one of the conferences that I do see the most representation in those groups. And so it is really refreshing to me, because while this community believes there's so much more to go and so much more to grow, as far as representation by contrast to other tech communities,
yes,
this is one that is demonstrating that growth and representation. And I get the privilege of traveling to events across the world, not just here in North America, but also in Europe and otherwise. And it is way less monolithic here today at this event than some of the many other events in tech that I see and attend.
That is a wonderful observation. And I will say that's been my experience. I think the men in this community are really great allies for women. That's, you know, they've given me some really wonderful opportunities to speak up. And so that's one of the things I've really loved about this Magento community too. When you go to these other conferences, the other tech conferences that are really, you know, let's be honest, e-commerce is very male dominated, which is so interesting, because if you think about e-commerce, most of the people that are buying online are women. You got fashion brands and you've got so, you know, it can feel sometimes, I think, as a woman, fairly intimidating. Like when I first joined the e-commerce space, I was like, oh my gosh, there's just men everywhere. I feel like a fluffy unicorn, you know? What have you noticed about the difference between the other conferences that you go to and this one, in terms of what's the question I'm trying to say? In terms of how people are interacting with each other and innovation, let's just say.
Yeah, that I think that in the tech space, you know, we all are continually innovating, right? That's why the tech community is thriving and conquering challenges that were undiscovered. So I would say that that's a universal truth across the tech communities that I am exposed to globally. I do believe, however, that there is a strong sense of demonstrated community and deep connections, long-standing connections that I gauge in the Magento community that are core, they're representative, and people feel momentous as they're growing their independent business, whether it be a small startup or a large company that is the undercurrent of the Magento community. And that's really inspiring. That makes people feel like there's a space for them, there's opportunity to grow, things are happening, and there's more to come.
So what do you think other companies can learn from Magento about how they can kind of incorporate those qualities into their own cultures?
That's an interesting question. That connection and community piece is, I think, core to any open source community. And there are some communities that are doing that really, really well, and others that have opportunity to improve and grow and leverage that. I do see great successes where you have diverse ideas and diversity on every plane.
That are welcomed, that are invited to the table.
Well, and that are boldly sought out to be integrated. When you have diverse ideas coming from every cross-section in the universe of your ecosystem, Magento or other tech communities, you can really bring the best of the best. Also, there is a generational growth that is happening right now, at least in North America, in terms of people who are running the space of tech. And that is separating. There's a gap there that's from those traditional decision-making authority figures to those that are coming and here. And that's a different mind state. And so traditional organizations that are very highly structured sometimes can find the behaviors or characteristics of up-and-comers as challenging, right, and threatening, rather than bringing them in and saying, we need you to succeed in the next generation of our community, and taking those bold steps to integrate their thoughts, their approaches, tactics, and learnings. Because as we know, Gen X and below, all those up-and-comers have different behaviors, characteristics, and needs. And the tech communities, as they mature, have to start thinking about how are those groups significant players. And those groups are more diverse than the ones that came before them.
Absolutely.
So are we doing the right thing by those communities and integrating their thoughts, ideas, best practices, their wins, learnings, so that we all can have a brighter tech future together?
That was so beautifully said. Are we integrating their learning so we can all have a brighter tech future together? Like, I just love that. That's so true. Like, it's about having an open and collaborative environment where everyone's voice and ideas are welcomed and encouraged and supported.
And it goes beyond simply saying you're invited to the table. Oh, join me for dinner. It's actively seeking someone, sometimes at these events, taking them by the arm and saying, I want to bring you into this discussion.
Yes.
I want to have you join us at dinner.
Yes.
Or,
I want you to speak at this conference about this topic.
Precisely. And that's a behavioral shift that only those communities that are doing so are benefiting from, rather than simply saying, well, no one's applying to speak that represents this group. So they're just not active in the community, and leaving it at that.
Yeah, I think there's some intention. There's some intentionality there, right? Like, whoever is in a leadership position has a responsibility to intentionally make sure those voices are being invited and heard, because they're in a position of power. So I think in a lot of ways, it's like being very respectful about that position that you might be in if you are in a position of power, and how can you more intentionally lead by, going out and actively trying to bring in those other voices.
And that's different than just saying we're an inclusive group. Right? Everybody should be that by default. It's taking the action to activate on a plan to say this is what we should be representing, and then actively bringing in individuals by going out into the universe and seeking out the best and bringing that forward into your organization, rather than waiting for them to show up at the front door.
I love that. High five to that. Very good. Okay, Letoya, we didn't get a chance to have you tell our listeners a little bit about you. We just jumped right in. So tell us about you, who you are, and where people can reach you.
Who am I? That's such a big question. Many things.
I'm known for the big questions. I will tell you. I've gone off a couple of interviews and people are like, You really asked me some doozies, so you know, what can I say?
Yes. Who am I is a big question, but I'll narrow it down for this.
Yeah.
So my name, of course, Letoya Boyne. I happen to be local to South Florida, and so I do live under the sun, and I love bopping down to the Florida Keys in my vintage camper and just laying out on the weekend and, you know, fluttering around in the sea. And drinking a margarita.
Fluttering around in the sea. Bopping down to the Keys and fluttering around in the sea. Don't we all want to do that? I want to flutter around in the sea with you.
Yeah, toes in the sand with a margarita in my hand. So that's, you know, what I do on the weekends when I'm not working.
Because you're a girl who works.
I am a girl who works.
That's right.
I'm a mom who works, a wife who works, and I have had the pleasure in working in marketing and events, which is my trained discipline. Through my education, but also through experience professionally for, now over 20 years.
Wow.
So I have really had a diverse career implementing marketing through events for the not-for-profit sector, also for the tech sector, which is where I live and breathe today. But I've worked for Fortune 100 companies, and I've also done my own thing, marketing and consulting as well. So I bring all of those experiences to the forefront, and today Platform.sh is the company that gets to benefit from that.
Right on.
So
yes.
I am the director of event marketing at Platform.sh. We're a cloud application platform, so we support conferences just like this and the Magento Association, as well as other communities across the globe in tech. And in that role, I get to work on an amazing team globally. And so I may be at an event like this week. And then Sunday, I'm flying to Paris, and we're hosting an event with the AI Summit that the government of France is hosting. And then the next week, I'm in New York. And so we have events globally, from Australia to the States, Europe, etc. And I get to bring our brand to the forefront and showcase what we have to offer at this event.
That's amazing. Like, you get to travel the globe, and you get to be a mom to two beautiful children, right?
Yes, two boys.
Oh my gosh, like, that's incredible. I love it. Well, I want to hear from you. Like, our show, we love to have people talk about a woman in history who's inspired them, you know? Because I think if you can see it, you can be it.
That's right.
And every woman is standing on the shoulders of a woman who came before her and paved the path and broke barriers. So is there someone, or some more than, I mean, obviously there's so many but is there someone that comes to mind for you that really inspired you, that really, you know, you feel connected to in some way?
Yeah, that's another big question. But I have to say, you know, somebody that comes to the forefront for me is my grandmother. And I'm fortunate enough actually to have two grandmothers alive that have influenced me since I was a small child. They've been in my life very actively. They're aging now, but one of them in particular is someone I think about every single day. She raised 5 boys, and I just have 2, and I'm running on fumes. So I can only imagine her daily experience. And the reason that she often inspires me is because, one, she has made so many sacrifices of her own self for her family, but has still stayed strong in creating a path for herself to feel fulfilled as a mother, but also as a working woman when she could make that space for herself, and created a sense of independence, not just emotionally and operationally in her mindset, because, you know, with 5 kids, when do you have time for yourself and a husband? But she created a space where she always could thrive and have some level of fiscal independence.
Love that.
And she told me a story just recently when I visited her over the holidays in Jamaica. And she said, you see that tree outside, right there out the window? And she lives on a family property that has been in the family for over 100 years. So she was born on that property. And she said, you see that tree out there? She said, when I had my first son, when I was pregnant with my first son, who happens to be my father, she said, my mother said, I love you, your life is going to change and you're going to have to find a way to create independence for yourself. And she was 18 years old. And she told me that inspirational story just this holiday, Christmas time. And so from 18, she had that seed planted that she should always carve out a space of independence and opportunity so that she could have a little in her pocket, or maybe more, to carve the path that she set out for herself beyond being a mother, but just being a woman. And so she would do small things to always have that change in her pocketbook.
Yeah.
And those stories vary over the course of her nearly 90 years of life, and I've heard many of those. But every time I sit with her, I get one more morsel of what ultimately might be the last story that I hear from her, but continues to inspire me in that same direction of not losing myself in the role of
caring for someone else,
caring for others, but also carving a path that I can feel fulfilled from, that I can have a sustainable future from, that I feel more of myself in. And that's something that I hope I can carry on, not just to my children, but other women in particular around us, that we should always have that. And for her to be told at 18 by another woman 90 years ago, when the context
think
of
about
life was so different.
Yeah. That's incredible.
That
it gives me the goosebumps.
That gem, that my great-grandmother ultimately telling her that has set things into motion in a way generationally.
Yeah, and look at you now.
Where
you're like
I can
living
sit
that
today.
legacy. I mean, I think your grandmother must look at you with such pride to say, like, because of the choices I made, I was able to create this for my daughter, or my son and my granddaughter.
Yes.
I mean, that's like a beautiful, and I think you mentioned about how it's important for us as women to, carve our own path and find that independence. I think that helps us find a greater sense of who we are and confidence. And then we can show up for the other people in our lives in a much more stronger, impactful way. Yes. Because we know who we are and we're making time for ourselves and we're valuing ourselves enough. And the people around us will benefit from that because they're going to get the best of us. Yeah. They're not going to get this like burnout, tired person that just doesn't even know who they are.
And
so
there's inevitably some of those days.
Yes,
right. We all experience that. But what helps me self-motivate and get out of bed in the morning without feeling like the world is on my shoulders is remembering that my grandmother is sitting here too. Right. She's helping me up and moving forward, because surely if she made the kind of sacrifices that I have seen over the course of her life, surely, I don't have those same challenges in front of me. And there may be others that are different, but I know that it's possible because I've seen it, I've witnessed it, and I can live it.
Love it. I love it. That's so beautiful. I love that you have your grandmother on your shoulder always. What a great way to end this wonderful conversation. Thank you so much, Letoya, for such a touching.
Yes, I feel like we're in a
That was so amazing. Thank you. I love that. I just love that concept. I have such a deep love for my grandmas who are both passed now, but they are both such beautiful, strong women in very different ways. And I just love that idea of like your grandmother. You have your grandmother on your shoulder, and I think it's important for us as women to remember and carry them on that way. So thank you so much for being on the show.
That's a wrap for today's episode of Hello Moxie e-commerce edition. Thanks for joining us as we bring you the latest news in the e-commerce industry and celebrate diversity and innovation in the tech sector.